welcome to Final Fights. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who is currently holding a sword called the Buick Slayer. It's Nathan Leahy.
I have the power over Buicks.
That's what they called the sword in this movie.
The Buick Slayer?
Yes, they called that sword. So Anthony DeLongis, who also plays Blade, he actually is in the world, like the World Hall of Fame of knife throwers. So Blade in this movie, he actually he was Skeletor's stunt double in this fight, and he also helped with a lot of the stunt choreography. And he actually part of my job was teaching Dolph how to wield his sword. So they met. He told him he knew what he was doing. He was actually in the Black Belt Hall of Fame, and he's in the Knife Throwing Hall of Fame, which is amazing.
Wow.
He's with Danny Trejo from Desperado and that.
That's hilarious that he is so legit with such a goofy costume. Like, how just like, what do we call this guy when he's got all the, he looks like a Blade. Yes, I love it. It's right on the nose. We don't need to think about it anymore. Blade it is.
All right, so we got Blade. But he said that Dolph took to his training immediately. A lot of the choreography was done virtually on the spot, and you can tell from this final fight. But he said though that the Dolph's talent as an athlete and martial artist, that he was able to roll with the punches and get the job done with style. He's like, what we assembled was literally done on the day of the shoot. They called the sword the Buick Slayer because it was rather ponderous and hazardous. It was very tough to maneuver. And he said, anybody with less strength and athleticism than Dolph would not have been able to manipulate it with such apparent ease. Dolph did a really good job, and I was proud of our work together. So Blade and him had this battle, and dude, that sword looks heavy, and Dolph is throwing a Buick Slayer around, and it looks natural, right? It looks.
I wouldn't say natural.
For the day of.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he definitely is saying he did his best. I can absolutely believe it. Man, so how far back are we going in the fight? Just the Skeletor He-Man?
Oh yeah, just Skeletor He-Man. So what we have
Okay, when the lights go off. Got it.
So do you know why the lights went off?
Yeah, so you made this comment to me when we decided to do this final fight, and we were talking about the movie, and I told you this is one that I watched when I was growing up. Funny side note really quick before I go on to that. I didn't have the full movie. I just realized it when I was watching it the other day. I did not have the full movie when I was a 5-year-old. We taped it off of TV or HBO or something, and the first 20 minutes were forever missing from my childhood. So when I watched it the other day, that was the first time that I ever saw the first 20 minutes of this film. In Eternia, yeah. And so, sorry, quick side note there, but
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's like,
when you brought
Goonies,
it up,
that's like Goonies with the octopus, and I was, and then it wasn't on anything, but it was on the Disney Channel.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's fine. Oh, octopus. But yeah, when we decided to do this movie, you made a comment that you were just saying like, oh yeah, it's really great and it's everything. You know exactly when they just ran out of money.
The lights.
And I had that in mind when I was watching it, and yeah, it was going through, and all of a sudden here comes the final fight, and there's no one else on set, and all the lights are off except for like 4 like spotlights that are like, swirling around, and I was just like, oh wow, he was not kidding at all.
Canon Films, They ran out of money. I mean, you watch that Electric Boogaloo, the documentary about them. They ran out of money, and they had to shoot that scene, but they couldn't afford any grips or electricians or extras, so they just bombed a couple lights on them.
And it's so funny. And I remember when I was younger, I thought it was like really this epic, because like, oh, it's just the two of them and going through. And now as an adult, I'm just like, wow, there was an army. There was, Courtney Cox dying over there. There was, I forgot that James Tolkien was in the movie. He's great in it. I love him. That, he was over there before all this happened. And then all of a sudden it's just no one and the two of them. And it was like, for as powerful as these two are supposed to be, it was like really kind of lackluster.
The best part about this fight is when Dolph pulls out the sword after he got Force Lightning by Skeletor, by the way. Let's call him Mecha Skeletor, by the way. Mecha Skeletor.
What a weird costume. Like when you think of someone being like, I have all the power of the universe and going through, and it just turns gold and gets unsightly and just really hazardous. And like he could, poor Frank Langella, there's no way that he would have been able to move comfortably in that, let alone fight in it. Like, it looked like he was uncomfortable just standing with all that stuff.
His performance is excellent, though. A curious quartet. And,
it's
I want
wonderful.
nothing or everything. And, I mean, it's very... I wrote a Cracked article about poignant moments. And so you should read about Mark Hoffman Crack. Go look up that article. But yeah, I read my stuff. But all right, so I love how he swings over on the gold drapes first. He-Man just swings over on gold drapes.
Yeah.
My favorite part, though, is Dolph pulls out the sword. I have the power. But there's a big light that comes out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Skeletor just turns around like, oh, my eyes. And there is nothing less threatening about a mecha godlike character who has gotten the supreme power than when it turns around, it's like, man, that sword's bright. And
listen, the power didn't go into his corneas. That was the only thing that he sacrificed. The power that could have gone into the corneas went into the helmet. He sacrificed the corneas for the helmet. He's like, I don't need those. I'll be fine. Who's gonna spotlight me with anything here? I'll be fine.
It all went into his neck because that helmet was so heavy. So all neck muscles.
There you go. It had to support the weight. Yeah, and the sword, like for something that is, for people that watched the cartoon or knew anything about just He-Man in general, they're like, this is the power sword. This is what gives him all of his power and do that. And like, I don't think they ever really made that a big deal in the fight or in the movie at all. Like He-Man was like a strong dude and he was a good fighter, but like they never made any big impact on the sword itself other than it was his and it was this trophy that Skeletor was going to have.
No, yeah. No, you're right. It's not really ever important, is it?
Not really. He just talks about like, oh, the sword of Grayskull and it's mine forever and it'll be here in this crudely made lock that doesn't apparently work too well, as we'll find out in 20 minutes. And it's funny because like leading up to that fight, there's some decently fun weapons that come out. There's like the laser whip that Blade has and things like that. And it's just like, yeah, it's a sword and a staff for the dude that has all the power in the universe. Like there's no magic. There's no more of the force lightning. He's not super strong. And there's half the fight is flourishes, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's no
Dolph
lights.
Just like a close up on him trying to make himself look fancy and good.
I mean, so what is Skeletor doing when he's doing 40 seconds of sword flips?
Trying to hold the helmet on with his super strong neck muscles.
Flip that sword while I adjust my head, please.
Exactly. And what's funny, 5-year-old me thought that that's how you're supposed to fight. For Christmas that year, I got a He-Man power sword, and when I was playing with my brother, we would be like, chee, 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 and I would always step back and go before we would go at it again. And I just thought that's how you're supposed to fight with a sword.
So do you think the Phantom Menace and then eventually Revenge of the Sith with their fancy lightsaber spinning stole from Masters of the Universe?
Oh, geez.
Stupid.
No, I would say not at all.
I do love how, so he gets the power, they both start to fight each other. And there's 2 segments of this fight. The first segment's 26 strikes. And it's just them kind of throwing parries at each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just bonking on the staff. I mean, there's no real danger other than maybe Dolph Lundgren pulling out his rotator cuff when he lifts that sword out. The Buick Slayer swinging it that they learned on the day. And also another interesting thing, the fight choreographer, he was on Escape from New York and Blazing Saddles. Those good fights in that movie, man. I dig it. Lauren James, he actually did it. I love it. And also props though to William Stout, who was the production designer on this movie. Also the costumes are like, I love the creations in this movie for the budget. And also, Gary Goddard, he had to move overseas because I don't want to talk about it, it's gross. But the director, he got in a lot of stuff, but he said, guys, just let me build Eternia so we can shoot it for 20 minutes in the beginning and 20 minutes at the end. And so that's how they were able to build such a big set, which I kind of love. But you have Eternia, you have this epic showdown, and it's 3 minutes, if like 2 minutes. And there's a total of 32 strikes, and Skeletor goes flying 50 feet on just a random Dolph parry from a sword.
Well, it had the power, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
He said it. He said it at the very beginning. He had the power. What did you expect?
So you can have power, but you don't have the power. So he had the power. I mean, he had the Buick Slayer, I guess.
And it's also funny that the big like coup d'etat of this whole thing is no one gets a hit on each other, do they?
Never.
Like they don't even never. And it's just like king, and all of a sudden I break your staff and that's it. Like it was never like, yeah, Skeletor always had his staff, but the power never flowed from it. Even when he got like enveloped in all the stuff earlier on, it swirled around him. It went in his ugly white pale face and lit himself up. But like, it's And it's funny, as a kid, I'm like, yeah, get him. He's done for. Like, it made so much sense. And as a logical adult, it's just like, that was it.
Question for you. Who's a better fighter, Mecha Skeletor or Skeletor? Because Skeletor had his most success after he lost his Mecha Skeletor ability.
Yeah, I would say Skeletor for sure. He had less weight on his head, so he was able to swivel around, do that more, 100% there. Mecha Skeletor didn't do anything physical. He just started to shoot laser beams out of his eyes and telling people to kneel. Like, that didn't really do anything at all. He didn't really, for all the power he had, he really didn't show anything off other than the power of his mouth.
And listen to me. No. What? That's all I got. I do love when Dolph swings over on the gold drapes. He kind of moves out of the way very slowly, like, oh, grumble, 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 grumble. He moves out of the way. But I do like the big sword swing that regular Skeletor has at the end. It reminded me of Kingdom of Heaven, when Liam Neeson is teaching Orlando Bloom how to fight with the overhead swing, and then he knocks the sword out. There's some tension there. He has to save the sword. You're like, oh man, the sword. But then Dolph is almost better fighting when he's like horizontal on the ground. They're not standing up. I mean, his sword strikes seem more powerful. Oh, I guess his sword strike is more powerful because it has the power, and Skeletor isn't Mecha Skeletor, so those blasts hit harder.
Yeah, that would make more sense. That would make more sense then.
I hate it
Do
when
you
I
think,
correct myself.
So he had the power, and Mecha Skeletor had the power of the universe because he was the master of the universe then. Do you think when the Buick Slayer slayed the staff, do you think it took in the rest of that power into itself? So that was what hit even harder?
So it became the power of the universe?
He has the power of the master of the universe. It was like, the power, and he's also the master of the universe. It's a double. Wow.
Okay, that's like if Thanos has all of the Infinity Stones in the Gauntlet, and then he gets... What's another movie that has the power in it? Then he gets the power.
He gets the power. I'm going to say he gets the power cosmic. We're in the Marvel Universe. He gets the power cosmic, and he gets the Gauntlet. Whoa. So he gets Silver Surfer's strength, given to him by Galactus, and he also has that. That'll be good.
And then he gets Captain Marvel's power, so he can fly around the universe.
He can do that with the power cosmic? How dare you belittle the power cosmic? We're going to we don't need to get into comic book stuff. You're going to get me into this whole tirade.
I'm an X-Men guy.
I'm an X-Men guy too, man. I love them.
I'm more about the X-Men because they just felt more human to me. I felt like they could die.
Oh, and they have.
Exactly.
many times.
I love X-Men 280 through 290. There's this thing where the Sentinel comes in and just blows off this guy's head. He has like a tank body and just blows off his head. Some of the best animation I've seen. I love that, man. I guess I've always liked the X-Men because they can die.
I think that was one of the Marauders or one of the Reavers. The dude with the tank body and like the mohawk, and he just had like the coils around his tummy and the big, yeah.
And the Sentinel puts his hand on his head and blows it off. It's one of my favorite visuals. And, that comic book stole a lot from Masters of the Universe online. But I gotta tell you.
I was waiting for the explanation, and I saw your face. I was like, he's a liar. He's a huge liar right now.
There's a charm to this fight scene, though. It is very PG. And listen, they ran out of money.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
They had maybe 3 lights. And, I mean, they couldn't bring in any crew. So for a no-crew action film, like, there's a narrative to it. How does that sound? The narrative is, he becomes a Master of the Universe Skeletor. Skeletor becomes Mecha Skeletor. He-Man gets the sword, which gives him the power. The two head off. They're equal matches. But the power destroys the mastered power. He loses it. But then
I have a good idea.
Yeah.
Here's what we should do. Let's ditch that narrative and make our own narrative. Let's say that they had ample amounts of money to do whatever they wanted to do. Let's recreate this fight scene with money.
Well, there would have been a monster in the middle of the thing because they wanted to have a monster. Remember the monster in Masters in that little pit?
So there was a monster in the pit?
Yeah, they wanted a monster in the pit and they couldn't afford it.
I was going to say, I must have blacked out during that scene if there was a monster in the pit.
So the monster would have been there. It would have almost